Well, this is where Dennis Hoban gets to be proved right because he says he can hear me everywhere. So I hope everyone can hear me, and you're all very welcome. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honour and privilege to be here tonight at the launch of a long project which has finally come to fruition, a dream of our late chairman, Johnny Groden, and it has been brought to life by Chris Grady here and his son Ray, and for that we thank him. On behalf of the MDA, you're all very, very welcome. And this project is funded by the MDA, and we're very glad to do so. So next time you see envelope sellers coming with MDA envelopes, you know where your money is going. So, as I said, this is a project long in the making. And I'm sure you all agree when you see the books that it's a wonderful tribute to all those who risked their lives going to sea day in, day out over many, many years. So I'd like to introduce you now to Chris Grady, our chairman and author of the book.
I'm not used to shouting. Is that right, Brita? And I'm also not used to reading out something to say. It usually comes tumbling out in a torrent of all kinds of words. To go back to kind of explain in some way the makings of this book, at Tommy Joe Groden's funeral mass in the Canvey in March 2009, Father Gill in his eulogy referenced Tommy's time fishing for salmon, lobsters and shellfish, and the tradition of fishing in Murrisk down through the years. He said that someone should write all this material down or it will be lost forever. This thought stuck with me for over a number of years until a meeting with Johnny transformed the idea into action, resulting in what we see here, what we have here tonight. It was said that when Christopher Columbus discovered America, that he set out not knowing where he was going. Upon arrival, he did not know where he was, and upon returning, he did not know where he had been. So sometimes during the course of the work on this book, all of the above would have applied to me, and were it not for the encouragement that I received from a lot of people, it might have gone the way of a lot of well-meaning ideas. In saying that, I cannot take credit for all the work or all the vast amount of input into the book. It was through a huge number of people that the history was gathered. Since early 2013, the fishing history of Murrisk and the surrounding areas of the west coast, from Blacksod to Sliane Head, has been researched to the best of the ability of the small committee that undertook the task, minus, unfortunately, the attention and overview of our former chairman, Johnny Groden. A lot of groundwork had been put in place some years previously by some of the present committee, as can be seen in the small museum here on my left at the back of the cafe. But when we started out looking at compiling a written version of it, we decided that we should look at a broader canvas and talk to more people than was possible in 2005 and 2006 when that was developed there. And there was time constraints at the time, so we decided that there wouldn't be any time constraints on putting together the history, the written history. So hence, 4 years later, here we are, finished product. Over the 4 years, we took the rough with the smooth. We travelled far and wide. We got as much information as we could from all sources. We listened to everybody. And we had people like the young Foy brothers there, Jimmy and Paddy, who were enormous help because they really started us off. They gave us the information and the confidence to carry on. The just going back on the for over a number of years, I would have seen my father and my grandfather hitting off to the fishing grounds, 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe not returning for a week. We would have chased across the fields when the boats were coming in. We wouldn't see them until they got to the islands, and then we'd charge across the fields to meet up with them at the pier. We'd watch the weighing of the fish, the loading, the boxing of the fish, them loading on carts, and them heading off for the train in Westport. The fish had to be at the station for either the late goods train at night time or the early train in the morning. They weren't easy times. We would have seen a lot of poverty in those days. The late Sean Mulroy once said to me in Westport that were it not for the Murrisk fishermen, half the people on Peter Street would have starved. I don't think we should take it literally, but they did supply a huge amount of fish, because one of the reasons was there was no market for the small fish. So they took them and they sold them in town for a few pennies, and if the woman of the house didn't have the pennies, they looked the other way. When we came up to the 1950s, my generation would have seen huge changes. We experienced the arrival of rural electrification in the 1950s, and that brought about the biggest change imaginable in our lives. The introduction in the 60s of television, piped water from mountain streams. We still have the same thing today. Free secondary school education, dance halls and show bands, crew cuts or long hair and drainpipe trousers on the boys, little miniskirts on the girls to show their legs. The only downside was there was no dances allowed during Lent, and cavorting with the opposite sex was frowned on. I won't go into any details of any extracurricular activities that took place outside dance halls or behind hedges or whatever. We didn't have internet, broadband or iPhones. Wi-Fi was associated with ghost stories and the spirits. The devil was seen dancing in pontoon to the Dixie show band. And my next door neighbour could be heard singing Picking a Chicken after the station mass when someone had put a drop of the creature into her tea. Amid all this, our young people left our shores in their thousands, mainly to England, to work in the factories, on the roads, construction sites and the mines. They encountered much loneliness, hard work, and lived in poor accommodation from time to time. But the majority of them, in through sailing terms, set a steady course and did okay for themselves. We have a lot to be thankful to the British people for, as a lot of the Irish were very hard workers, but they were also very hard drinkers as well, and there was an obvious clash of cultures. Yet they took us in, and when the alternatives at home were very stark. I want finally to pay tribute to the many people that helped get this book into production, to all the people who contributed articles on their families, who supplied photographs, who researched old publications, historical documents and newspapers. Every little snippet was gratefully appreciated and examined. If you don't find your article or your name in the book, it's an oversight on our part, and your contribution was no less appreciated. I want to extend a very warm welcome tonight to Michael and Cathy Groden, who have travelled over from Scotland to be with us here. Michael is a grandnephew of Austria Burke's wife. I want to thank Harry Hughes, the Irish and International Entrepreneur of the Year, for coming here, and he's going to launch the book for you in a few minutes, or for me, or for whoever. And also all the people who travel long distances. I know some of my own family came from Dublin. And most of all, the local people who have looked forward to the publication and who are never tired of asking, is it finished yet? Traditionally, the 8th of December was the start of the Christmas shopping and house decoration of the home. So we decided that our little book would be included in your shopping list if possible. So we got it into the shops early in the week, and it's going very well actually. Please enjoy the night. I hope everybody enjoys themselves. Be careful on the roads. I don't think there's any frost, but remain alert and be careful, and a happy Christmas to everybody. Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce Ray Grady, who collaborated with his dad, Chris, on editing the articles and photos that were included in the book, and did excellent work, we'll all agree.
I'm just getting my pages ready here. I was trying to outdo my father for once today, so I have 4 pages, whereas he only had 3. So, so for those of you who know, I'm was the editor of the book, and I suppose that it just meant that I shaped some of the stories and the information. All the information was already there, and all I did was maybe rephrase the odd thing here and there, do a bit of typing, and I suppose a little bit more work went into editing of some of the photographs. There was a lot of old photographs, and some of them were stained with little ink spots and things like that, and fingerprints and all that. So just removing those, and I suppose the design of the cover as well. So that's pretty much all that I did. It still took me a long time though. As Leamy might talk about in a couple of minutes, I started off with a huge folder of information that Dad had collected over his 3 years. So I got it about a year ago, and sat down with Leamy McNally, and he showed me what was there and told me what needed to be done. And as I was leaving Leamy's house, I nearly had a panic attack when I got to the car with all that had to be done. But here we are, like a year later, and I'm incredibly proud of what we've produced, and it's a credit, and I want to thank Leamy for his contribution to getting us here. Most of all though, what I want to do is I want to thank my dad Chris. I'm thanking him for asking me to be involved in the project. I don't live here in Murrisk anymore. I just live up the road in Galway, but it's great to be part of something that reconnects you with the community here. And finally, I'd also like to congratulate Chris on the publication of this book. Chris has worked on this project for almost 5 years. He's carefully extracted information on the local fishery wherever he could. There have been days spent locked in libraries in Castlebar, up in the National Archives in Dublin, and he's conducted countless interviews with older people who still remembered much of the people and the boats that operated from Murrisk. All in all, he's collected information and stories that otherwise would have been forgotten over time, including the memories of my own grandfather Pat, who I know would have been very proud of this book. So I'd just like to finish off by saying congratulations, Dad, and here's looking forward to the next one. Cheers.
I'd now like to introduce Leamy McNally, who along with Chris and Ray produced the book.
I think it was last February I got this call. Can I meet you for a coffee? I says, fine. And I see this boy walking across O'Connor's car park with these big load of books and manuscripts. I said, coffee, I said, you know. But he had all these books, pages, articles, everything. I said, what's the story? He said, I want you to do a book. I said, well, I help people publish books. That's what I do. So where's the manuscript? Well, this is it. I said, no, that's not a manuscript. I want the written thing, the finished piece. He said, well, that's what I want you to do. I said, oh, gee, I don't do I do finished manuscripts. I kind of tidy them up and send them off. But anyway, we had a few meetings, and I looked at the stuff, and I said, oh, Johnny Groden was involved in this, I said. Now, Johnny Groden and I are old buddies. When I left Western Care, Johnny Groden went into the seat. You see, you remember Johnny from Western Care, you won't remember me from Western Care. That's the difference he made. And Johnny called out to the house one day, and we were having coffee at home. And when he came in the door, which is always the back door in our house, he stepped on a block. He says, why haven't you a step? I said, Johnny, I know nothing about steps. I says, that we'll finish the house eventually. Well, he says, to each his own. I'll mix a bit of cement on Saturday morning and I'll put down the step. As he did a few steps around the house. So every day, like a holy water font, when I step, I think of Johnny. So Johnny is very much part of our house, I have to say. As I said, I started publishing books about 15 years ago, always with an old friend of mine, Martin Curry. And this is the first one that March, I suppose, won't be here for. But he knew it was going on anyway. So I just want to acknowledge Johnny and March this evening, two good buddies. So then we went to... we went to sitting down and looking at all this pile of stuff I got anyway. Looking for a manuscript. You know, is there a story where it wasn't here, says I. Now, this boy talked about having a panic attack. I had the panic attack. I had a serious panic attack. And I said, we have to work this out somewhere because all I'm thinking of is Johnny Groden. And I says, was introduced to Ray. And I said, Ray, are you any good at doing this kind of... Well, I says, well is good enough. Because I knew then, when I saw his work then with television and everything else, I says, this boy can do it. So we sat down and we said, we kind of worked out a bit of a narrative and worked out a bit of a framework. And as I said, he did the book, not me. Not only that, he laid it out. And you see, there's all these processes when you publish a book. Laying out is a big job. He did all that. As he said, he got the photographs and he did them all up and made them all kind of print friendly. He said, I just edited it. There's no such thing as just editing. You really edited it. This is the man, as I said, who pulled the book together, and this is the man who kind of put all the little weaving bits together. He pulled them all together. And Covey Publications and Recordings, this is our 19th book, I think, now since we started. All local books. And I'm delighted to be associated with it. And I would love to, on a personal note, just dedicate it to the memory of Johnny and to the memory of March. And I want to say congratulations to Ray and congratulations to Chris and to MDA for starting out with the project and bringing it to fruition tonight. It's Gomerimage Bioig and I'm Shaharish.
And to launch the book officially, we have the presence of Harry Hughes here, who has written his own book about Crowpatrick and is very interested in the history of the area. So no more fitting man could launch the book. Harry, thank you.
Councillor Teresa, Brendan, Councillor Christie, ladies and gentlemen, you're all very welcome here tonight. So I have to raise my voice, I believe, because the microphone is off. On occasions like this, we think of Johnny Groden. We think of the great work and the organisation that he brought to Murrisk. And, you know, I'm delighted that Chris has acknowledged him in his book. We have special guests here tonight. I'm delighted to see Liam Lyons and his wife Mabel are here. And Liam has got some of his old and exotic photographs in this book. And it's a great resource for this area, Liam, and we thank you for that. You're most welcome to the launch of Murrisk, A History of an Irish Fishing Village. And I'm privileged to be asked to baptise this splendid book. I welcome the author Chris and his son Raymond, who edited the book, and all of the extended Grady family. I also welcome members of the Murrisk Development Association, who encouraged Chris and assisted in some of the research. Over the last 20 years, I've come to know Chris Grady. We were involved in a few projects together. I must say, a true gentleman, a proud Murrisk man, and one of the finest mayor men you'll ever meet. Chris and a committee met nearly 5 years ago to record the heritage and the history of the fishing industry in Murrisk. Today their endeavours are presented in this beautiful book. With Chris and Ray's family's heritage in fishing, local knowledge, interest in history, and a passion for the sea and Murrisk, this book, Murrisk, The History of an Irish Fishing Village, is the ultimate record of a once proud industry. John F. Kennedy said, "We are tied to the ocean, and when we go back to the sea, whether it is to sail or to watch, we're going back to whence we came from." This book is about survivors and survival. It's about families and a community. Most importantly, it's about a fishing community at the foot of Crowpatrick. The House of Commons commissioned a report about the agricultural labourer in the Poor Law Union of Westport in 1893. There are some very telling facts about the poverty of this region. The author of the report, he interviewed a number of people from Murrisk and Lecanvy. Typically, labourers had 2 acres of land and lived in a 2-room cottage built of rubble stone. The animals lived in the kitchen at night, and about 50% of the men fished with lines, so they were fishing from the shore. He interviewed Mr. Campbell, a shopkeeper, it stated, and he said about 70% of the girls go to America and about 25% of the boys. So this was a very impoverished area, as many other areas of this region was in the 1890s. In Cullimore Island, the schoolmaster said to the reporter that all the girls go to America. And this is why we probably don't have many people living on the islands, because they were all lost from 1890 to 1950. So fishing was a godsend to these people. The unpredictable nature of the weather made fishing a hazardous occupation. So risk and bravery are all parts of the stories recorded in each chapter of this beautiful gem. This lavishly illustrated book covers everything from piers, boats, fishermen and crews. There are chapters on the barony of Murrisk, famine times, improvements, Austin Burke and much more. There is a magnificent sense of pride of place in every page. It's a real record for generations to come. As I drove into the car park tonight and saw this edifice, I realised that there's no shortage of money in Murrisk. But when I walked in here and I see this crowd, I sense the great spirit of the community and pride that you have here. And I must say congratulations to you, because many other areas would envy what you've achieved here. So well done on that one. The book is published by Liam McNally from Media Mac under the imprint of Covey Publications and Recordings. And I have to acknowledge Liam, as he said, it's his 19th book. He does it very quietly, but these are 19 local books, and it's hugely important that we record all the different aspects of history in this area. So well done, Liam. It is a major undertaking for such a small voluntary group and worthy of everybody's support. We thank them all here tonight for publishing such a brilliant volume. You can dip in and out of this book, and of course it's not all about fishing and hard work. Chris writes extensively about Austin Burke, the father figure of the West Coast fisherman and his boat, the Myra. In May 1947, the Myra, which had been previously owned by Austin, needed to be sailed to its new owner in Arklow, a sea trip of 4 days. 2 crew from Arklow and Austin set off on Saturday the 3rd of May. A storm blew up, and 4 days later, no news from Austin. As the days passed on, the neighbours lost faith in ever seeing Austin again. However, on the 24th of May, 21 days later, Austin sent his wife a telegram which read, "Myra arrived Oban, brought all safe." So good news. The national and international press wanted Austin's version of events. He recalled the storm broke his steering and the compass, and after 5 days they'd ran out of food and water. They started drinking salt water, and by the 8th day Austin recalled, and these are Austin's words, "We were drinking up to 3 pints of salt water per day, and after that it was like a nightmare. My chest was as tight as could be, and I could hardly crawl along the deck, and it was then that I started to pray." How they endured another 13 days is a miracle, and the stuff of legend which will live on forever in this wonderful record. Jacques Cousteau, says, "The sea, once it casts its spell, holds one in its net of wonder forever." I'll just read that again. "The sea, once it casts its spell, holds one in its net of wonder forever." Father William Burke recalls his fondness for Murrisk when he was transferred from Murrisk Abbey to Ballyhaunis Abbey. "Farewell to you, lovely Murrisk, so tranquil and mild, and to the fine lordly mountains that rise up on each side. As I walked on the strand there, the curlew's refrain was the sweeter than all the music on this side of the plain." Well, we bid not farewell, but a great welcome to Murrisk, a history of an Irish fishing village. Chris, Raymond and the Murrisk Development Association, I wish you great success and wish this wonderful record is bought by everybody in the area and in town, and it deserves widespread support. And it's my great pleasure to officially launch this wonderful book here tonight. Thank you very much.
I'd just like to finish by thanking everyone for coming, and copies of the book are on sale this evening for €15, and I'm quite sure Chris would be willing to sign your copies if you so. He probably won't thank me for that, but while he's here, capture him. So the copies are for sale at the back of the marquee there. Thank you very much for coming.